Okay, I'm recording, and we'll just edit whatever doesn't work.
Oh,
Meaning,
okay. I
getting it.
won't talk shit about artwork people.
Yeah, that one person that we hate, we'll have to talk offline. Yeah.
How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
It was another week in Worklandia, but grateful for Worklandia, I guess.
Yeah, totally. It's like can't live
That
with
place,
it, can't live without it.
my job is so toxic. I love that there's a Tonya Harding drawing behind you.
Just keep it in the mood, like at the right level.
And your self haircut looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks better when it has some texture. Your hair looks pretty. Did you blow it out?
No, I
Uh,
like go sometimes curly, sometimes not. Who
It kind of does
knows?
like a little bit of like a finger wave,
Yeah,
which I like.
thanks. I
Yeah.
washed it for you.
Oh,
It's hard
well,
to wash one's hair in COVID land.
you just say what? Oh, right. Take showers and stuff.
I'm noticing the impetus is losing its luster. So,
Yeah. Okay, just to like quick introduce you. This is
yep.
Megan Reed, artist and organizer, you could say, from Los Angeles, former Bay Area resident and alumni of California College of the Arts. Um, Primarily, would you say you're a sculptor or just artist in general?
Just artist, yeah.
You make, yeah, paintings and stuff too, and collage.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so yeah, well, so I have kind of my like set of questions that because I just kind of want to compare and contrast everyone's experience. Um, and then we can kind of delve into some of the things that we've been talking about, like offline, kind of more broad.
Yeah.
So the first would be like, where are you living? What is your housing situation like? Like you're in an apartment building, but like, do you see people? Tell us about your cat.
Um oh, she's right here, Clementine.
Uh-huh.
She's my COVID partner in crime.
Oh,
Um yeah, I live in an apartment close to downtown LA. It's a pretty social building, which kind of freaks me out. 'Cause when I went to get the mail yesterday, everyone was like lounging by the pool without masks, and I'm like,
oh no.
no,
Like kind of yeah, but also no, don't do that.
no, no. So there are people around, but mostly, yeah, because I work remotely. I think I said this to you before. I've sort of um, already been living like this, which is, except for the fact that I don't really go to my studio in the afternoon right now, which was the thing that made it all bearable. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
definitely,
that was one of the things that I thought you could kind of really share is like as a single woman, freelancer and artist in kind of
yeah,
already slightly isolated city of Los Angeles, like what is it like to now be under quarantine? Like is it,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like not to call out your singleness, but it's real. Like
yeah,
people who have families, while it's I'm sure really annoying, it's also like this built-in support system. And when you're by yourself, you know, like I was in Mexico by myself for like 2 weeks, just kind of hoping I didn't like slit my like finger or something on like a bagel knife, you know, just
yeah.
stupid shit like that where you're like who would take me to the hospital? I guess I'd have to like call with my bloody finger, you know.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. You asked me this the other day, and I thought, oh my God, I'm such an introvert, I guess. Because I really like hanging out with people, but there was like the moment I started freelancing, not to go into the history too much, was about 2010 when I left my day job and like really wanted to focus on art more. And I remember there being this like shift when I started to realize, okay, I'm gonna have to sacrifice some social life in order to have both of these things. Like,
Mhm.
if I'm gonna work and be in my studio and being in control of my schedule, it also means you're gonna see people less. So part of me is already trained for it. But yeah, I think it brings up some existential stuff about like what happens if I get COVID and my cat, like there's no backup, sometimes just poor Clementine.
Cool.
At the same time, I feel like this is totally weird. it's been a great reflection point where I think, okay, now everyone knows what it's like to work from home, and everyone says, oh, you're so lucky, but it's actually kind of crazy making. And so I feel like there's this moment where everyone's kind of in the same boat as me for the moment. It feels a little bit reassuring. I don't feel like I'm the only one who's home, and everyone gets to be out, like at a job, like seeing people. So this collective like moment of pausing, and I'm doing it personally, like what do I want my life to be like at the other side of this, I think is kind of, I feel optimistic about that, weirdly, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Yeah, and are you getting answers, or is it kind of still in like percolation, and as we figure out what is actually going to happen, like I guess it's not totally possible to know what you would want because you don't know what the terms are, but do you feel like you
Well,
have
I
a
think
sense of some things that
I definitely, and we all think this, the ratio between work and studio, you know, is always the thing. And right now, since studio is not really happening as much, I can feel that absence. So obviously getting a normal where I'm back in my studio most of the time.
mm,
Um, yeah, I think that's it. And I think, yeah, the quality of the work that you do matters, who you work with and for.
yeah.
So you and I both have outside clients, and I'm sort of thinking like, okay, even though we can't really be choosy at the moment, like there are choices we can make about who we choose to spend our time with and work for. And
Mm.
some of that, I'm probably going to get fired for saying all this, but some of
I
that
was
I'm like,
gonna say
oh, these are
we need
people.
to cut this out. Like,
There's definitely like end dates in my mind for a few of them where I think, okay, this is just isn't worth it. And I think when you're home thinking and reflecting, and because the studio life is what gives my world meaning, you know, it even compensates for the fact that I'm single, which doesn't make me that sad most of the time because making art is everything. But then when you're just looking at the work isolated alone, I think that's actually a good thing that we should all be thinking about. What does work look like? You know, why do we do it? It's most of our lives. And
yeah. I kind of a couple of years ago before I started traveling got to that place where I was had a bad work-life balance, and then I think I'd like switched jobs a couple times, and I kept working for these companies where either I completely did not align with the values, but they paid well, or I felt like I wasn't giving everything to them, and that's what they needed for the job to like go well. And I felt like
yeah,
I was being dishonest and like being there and just like going through the motions because really all I wanted to do was make art. And I'm like, well, that's not something they're going to change because they don't care. You know, I need to like make that change for myself. And that's probably the more responsible thing to do is like not, it's kind of like leading someone on, like,
yeah.
take up their time, like unless you like have no other option, like don't waste their time with you being in that position when someone else could that cares, you know. And
It is so true. It's the one of the biggest ones. I feel disingenuous with them
yeah, and that's a bad
because
feeling.
these,
You're like, I'm a good person, but right now I feel like I'm lying to you.
and I don't want to give it my whole life. You know, these are, but I also think that we shouldn't be asked to do that for a job anyway. So part of that I think is like good realization, but
I mean,
yeah,
not everyone finds their calling in something that can make them money, you know, so it's like, yeah, not totally realistic, but also the American work-life balance, especially like in California, is totally out of whack. You know, you have
out
to
of
work so
whack.
much just to like exist there. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah,
that's like
definitely.
part of the problem too.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. We've talked about that, you and I. LA has gotten as expensive as the Bay in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that will all shift at the end of all of this. I was already thinking like, oh, I mean, I really like LA, but yeah, I think a lot of people were already starting to think like, how hard should we have to work in order to be an artist? And so that's why people were starting to move this stuff and things like that. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
for sure. Is there anything that you had planned like before COVID that you now had to like push back? Well, you just moved into a studio, a big new studio. But yeah, is there anything that you kind of had to cancel or that has shifted since it all has happened?
Travel stuff, which isn't really art related, but definitely travel. I'm in that show with Micah Wood in September at Johansson in Oakland, and we were just talking to her yesterday, and she's canceled the whole summer of programming. Not even just postponed, canceled.
Wow.
So sort of bracing myself for the fact that ours could. She doesn't think so now, but I mean, I guess the larger question is, how long is this going to last? And the more that I hear about the way things are going, I honestly think it's going to be a while. We're going to be on this sort of like up and down, in and out of quarantine. So I sort of expect that show won't happen now, which is a bummer.
Yeah, I know. Well, and then, kind of people are finding alternative ways to show, because I mean, I guess galleries need to stay in business. So
yeah,
it kind of like distills it down to what is the bare need that they have, versus like you and your needs as an artist. Like they just need to sell work. So like, would they just have the show and only show it online, or, but yeah, maybe it's not even worth it to do that. I don't know.
The one other thing that got interrupted is, it's hard for me to have any sort of thing interrupt my work. I think you've probably gotten really good about establishing yourself in a new space and picking up the pace again, because you've been doing that now for a couple of years. Moving studios. What's that?
It's hard. It's still hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Moving studios is really disruptive, and so I feel like I haven't recovered from that. But then I was also about to get some works fabricated in metal for that show.
Oh, cool.
And then I thought, what's that?
What were you going to do?
Well, I was going to use some of the existing big sort of sculpture pieces and have them. I was going to do a prototype, and then airbrush painted.
And like cast them in bronze or something?
Not bronze. I don't think I can afford it. It would just be like aluminum probably at this point.
Oh,
but I was just starting, to work with a fabricator, and then, all of that's been paused. So it's not that I can't be picked back up, but
it's disappointing.
Yeah.
And like, how was your studio? Like, so you moved in like right at the beginning of April, is that right?
I started moving in, and it's been the funniest of moves, and actually in some ways easiest of moves because of all of this. But I started moving in on the 15th of March, right when it was all
right before something happened. Yeah.
And then I just literally, it kind of gave me something to do. I would go at the end of the day and like pack up my car when no one was around, just do a load. And then I did like the biggest pieces last weekend, so it's all done now. But so it was like a really slow kind of process, which was sort of easy. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to go there, or is it more like don't go?
I don't know. I was just talking about this with someone else. Like, because I think we're all trying to figure out this new etiquette that.
Yeah.
What's up?
Well, what are the rules in LA right now? Are you
rules in LA are that we're masks if you go outside of it for any reason, no gatherings, but it's murky when it comes to, I mean, none of the restaurants are open or anything. It's murky when it comes to indoor spaces like studios. So I feel like if we staggered it, there are 4 of us, if we staggered it, maybe that's okay. I mean, we each have our own space. I don't know. My brother's a musician in the Bay Area. He has a practice space, and at first he was like, I think it'll be fine. I'll just go. But now he's like, there are crowds of people hanging around. It feels unsafe to me.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to figure that out, because if this is something that goes on for 18 months, like,
I
don't.
People are going to
not going to be able to not have studios.
That's not going to be healthy.
Yeah.
So. I mean, have you, back to kind of like a slightly more positive note, if you can find one? I mean, in thinking about, kind of things that we can take away from this that we already talked about, like re-envisioning what your life could be afterwards. But are there any kind of other silver linings? I mean, the one I was going to say is that the level of pollution has gone down a lot in LA.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing.
It's totally amazing. Last night, I think I posted a photo of it. It was like, I remember when I lived in New York, there would be that blue magic evening hour. It was like super blue. It was just like royal blue. And I don't feel like I've ever seen that in LA. And last night there was like crisp sky, like mountain air, you know. Like,
Well,
this is
all
Los Angeles, and I live like really close to a freeway too, and there's just, so those are nice things. And I think people are maybe getting used to some of that, or maybe it's, what's that?
well, I was gonna
A
say it
month?
didn't take that long, you know, for it to change, which is
No.
kind of great, but also like, I don't know.
And I think the other silver linings, I hope, I mean, this is political, but it's like, it's articulating what kind of our values are as a society. And I think the state of California is doing some things that are, I'm proud to be a Californian. I hope it expedites focus on climate change, but also on the fact that we as a state are such a big contributor. And here I am lecturing, but we're such a big contributor to the economy. We are a nation state that we can take the lead on climate change in our
Yeah.
own realm in some ways, which I think state of California is already doing. But then I also hope it expedites other things around like statewide healthcare, the homeless problem. Like, it's forcing social services issues, which I think,
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't divide the country even more red and blue, because some states are doing it and some states aren't, or paying attention to it. But I think that's a silver lining of it.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know anyone who's volunteering? Because I know in California, they're doing a lot of, and probably other states too, they're changing hotels or like unused spaces into hospital rooms. Are they doing that in California as well? Or in LA, sorry? Or
I
like,
don't know about LA. I know it was like the Queen Mary, which is the decommissioned royal yacht or whatever. I think that was a hospital for a minute.
wow.
I know the Bay Area definitely is turning, San Francisco's turning hotels into or homeless encampments or places to live.
Yeah, or they're telling people to like social distance, like within their homeless camp, like a parking lot. They're like every other parking space. You have to like put your tent so you don't get COVID from your tent mates. Which is dark.
Yeah, and it's crazy because my old studio was in downtown, and I thought, wow, this. I mean, back to the silver lining of isolating problems in even more stark relief. The homeless problem in California is just crazy, but
yeah,
they were like literally abandoned. It was like everyone else is gone except homeless people with no support, nowhere to go, no masks, no. I think that's all good stuff.
that they're changing.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to think about art in that context too. When I think about back to making art, I don't know how you feel, but a bunch of people I've seen say this online. Like, have you made anything this month? And I think no, because I've been moving studios. But even if I had my studio, it's really hard to think about making, I think, in some ways, or what to make or how to make in the face of all of this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a deadline the way that you do as well, like for September. So I kind of had my like set number of images that I was going to try to produce while here, and like really regimented.
Yeah.
I think it was like about halfway through, you know, COVID really started to hit the US and like especially San Francisco. And I got all these texts from San Francisco about, you know, self-quarantine and you can't go outside. And so I started thinking like, well, I should probably do that. And then everything started to sink in for me and feel weird, even though I knew it was kind of happening before. And then since then, I guess I've been kind of internalizing it, even though where we are, like there's not a lot of action being taken to kind of make people stay inside. Like they're doing some things, but so I feel like even though it's happening so far away, yeah, I've kind of had to take a pause and like I do more writing than painting, and yeah, like recontextualizing the work you've already made.
Yeah.
Well, and your work kind of started, like I remember you did this, the painting salon lecture. It was talking about chromophobia.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And your color palette was based on like tents of homeless people in like East and West Oakland, and
the colors of the houses. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so, yeah, I'm wondering if you're like kind of reevaluating your work. I really love seeing you posted this video with you wearing one of your pieces, like your soft sculptures, and
yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of made me think of like a hermit crab. Like going around on a beach, like living in that object, and like that could be all of us at some point,
Yeah,
you know, in the apocalyptic future.
totally. I love that idea. And yeah, I think it clarified when I made those self sculptures. It was just interesting. I made them after I did that Facebook thing. They were almost like memento mori, and I was so tired from making physical works. I just sat on my couch and sewed these like vinyl replicas. But then they became like, yeah, like pillows or things to cuddle. So that was interesting. But then they are like funny costumes. And then it has made me think about the big sculptures that I make as kind of temporary dwellings. You know, we're thinking about architecture and the ways in which they reflect values, but I mean, sculpture is a space creator. Yeah, it's interesting, especially given everything and thinking about tents and how in that time that we were both in the Bay, it just felt like the homeless population exploded and those encampments were everywhere, and it's even worse in LA. And then in the light of all of this, where everyone's like a paycheck away from being homeless, it's funny to think that maybe that was weighing on my mind more than I knew, even though
Yeah.
I come from a certain amount of privilege. But I think even though I do, back to our point about the fact that we're all working so hard to live in these places, it's precarious. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah, the performance part of it is why I think I wouldn't just say I'm a sculptor, because my original interest was in performance. And so
I
it's
always
been
forget
fun.
that you do that, but they're so good, your performances. I love that
But
as
they're
a way
fun.
to activate your sculpture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been fun. And it was fun I made that performance at Mass Mocha. And that was just another space that was sort of crumbling and reinvented. And it's like, this space dedicated to, it was an industrial revolution, sort of, it created in the light of that. It was a textile factory. Now it's a museum, and it's literally falling apart in some places. And so it's just, there were values written all over it. It was fascinating to see them like still sort of ghostly lingering. And so it was fun. I wore my sculpture around and did this like performance, and I got in trouble. And
Oh,
yeah, it was
great.
funny.
And that was for your residency. Remind me the name of the residency.
It's Mass Mocha is artists
Oh,
assets for artist residency.
right.
But yeah, the performance part of it, I think, yeah, even right now, I think we're thinking at home how much we perform roles, right? Like now all of a sudden our costumes are off, we're at home. And so I think I'm thinking a lot about that again too.
Yeah. I guess your residency was a little bit more social, but I feel like at artist residency, some of the structure of like daily life really falls away. And so it's been interesting, kind of like what you're saying about being a freelancer, working from home. Like I've been kind of living this weird detached from everyone life where I'm often like isolated and don't have a ton of structure, and nobody cares if I like get dressed up because there may or may not
Yeah.
be anyone to see, you know? And I've been kind of doing it for a couple of years off and on. And so like now it's like really validating to see people, maybe validating is the wrong word, but like it's interesting to see people kind of have to go through that as well, and like see some of the same issues come up that came up for me, and like but also now they're more available to chat, whereas before, you know, I wasn't able to get a hold of people because everyone's got their life and they're out to openings and parties, and I had a lot of FOMO.
Totally. I feel exactly the same way. I think people, and it's interesting, hopefully validating when people are like, oh, making art, it doesn't have value, or, you know, however people say it, because all these people who are like, I need to come up with some crafts to fill the time. And like, yeah,
right.
That's what we do. Like
we come up with crafts to fill your time. To keep you distracted from the idea of death, and like that's all.
And that faux busyness that we all had, like, it's so interesting that that's all fallen away. Now we all want to talk on the phone all the time, you know, before we were like, it shows how much of a mirage that was, I think. And the FOMO part of it is funny, because I will say this is probably sacrilegious, but I don't feel bad now that I don't have to go to art openings. I really hate them. I really, really hate them. I miss seeing art in person. Art openings are exhausting. So
Yeah. Well, and I wonder.
I don't want them to never exist again. I don't want to say that, but
Absolutely. Well, and don't you feel like when we all go to an art opening, either we're going to be totally traumatized and like not want to be within 6 feet, or we're going to just like cuddle puddle in the middle of the gallery, just like, oh, bodies. People.
I know. I think that could be really awesome. Like a show for everyone.
Yeah,
So
just like touch,
see.
just like sit on the big round couch and just roll around.
I think, yeah, it's a real gift, a big collective pause. I think there's a gift. And it's also interesting, and I'm tangenting here, but was I talking about this with you or someone else? But it's funny how so many people, I think, are getting this, like, they're reaching their limit of how much self-reflection they can handle.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's like, oh, storming, the steps in Lansing, Michigan and things like that. It's like, back to work. It's like that value is literally such a core American part of our identity. People are resisting it, but if they could just hang on, I think there's so much that we could get out of it on the other side.
Like, and it's really the responsible thing to do. I mean,
it's also just the responsible thing to do. Yeah.
Assuming you can afford it, which not everyone can. So that's like a whole other ballgame. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So like, how are you passing the time? Like, do you have any COVID projects or like COVID haircuts or like movies, TV, books that you're kind of digging into?
I think because I have a freelance gig, I kind of emerged that I had a bunch of additional side clients, and I was sort of going to let them go and focus on this one larger one. And because of the financial precarity, I kept them all. So I've been doing mostly work. And, sort of thinking about having an emergency fund for that. That also may end up, if we kind of this, more smoothly, maybe it'll mean that I can work less and make more art later. So that's been kind of my focus. But tons of Zoom calls with friends, house parties, and I'm in like a Zoom book club. We're meeting tonight. TV. Yeah. I feel like in some ways I've been more social through everyone's connecting through Zoom, and that's been a good thing. So
yeah, what you're talking about it, like, I think partly it's what you were saying about the anxiety of like, oh, I can only do so much self-reflection. I need to now like be really social and like fill my day. But it feels in some ways you could be more busy than ever because no one's driving anywhere and that takes up time, so you're like, I could just go from one Zoom call to the next and like one Zumba Zoom call / to like my language class to, it's like never stop improving and connecting.
But it's interesting too, because it feels like it's been for me a phased approach of acceptance. And I don't know if you feel this, but it was like the first week we've been talking about it. It's probably going to hit here. I was supposed to go to the Bay that second week of March. And I'm like, I don't think I should go. And some people are like, go. And some people were like, no. It was still this abstract idea. And then all of a sudden it felt like everything shut down fast.
Yeah.
And then it was like sort of a suffocating feeling. Oh my God, this is the new normal. And then for a minute there, it was like, oh, we're all baking. This feels good comfort food. And then this week and last, it starts to feel like it's becoming, I'm accepting it. Like this is it. Yeah, and only now can I sort of like read again. But then I feel like the space is opening up to think about what I want my work to be, what I want the life to be like after. Like, but it's kind of a topsy-turvy month, I think, for all of us emotionally. Like,
were you the one?
And you're far away.
Yeah, which in some way makes it easier. But was it you who said it's like the longest week or like last week was the longest year of my life? Or something?
That's how that meme going around. Yes, seriously. Like, and it's funny how everyone I talked to today for work calls was like, wow, this was a long week. Everyone felt it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's this palpable sort of collective energy that's weighing down. But
Yeah, well,
anyway.
4 weeks is like kind of the max. You know, if you knew
Ooh,
it was
I
going to
think
end
I've
after a
lost.
month, like I think people could be like, wow, that was a month. Like I made it. But people are like, oh
Yeah.
shit, that was a month. Do I have to do this again, like for another month? You know, and kind of flipping out about that maybe a little bit.
But I wonder with you if yeah, we talked about concepts of home. It might have been good training for you too. Like you're sort of used to being in a liminal space.
Yeah, this isn't that much different. I mean, it's different to hear of all the people dying and like the real threat of this scary, unknown, like untestable, you know, thing out there that like, you know, we don't know enough about it right now. So I think that's the part that's scary, but the actual lifestyle, you know, I have 2 residents here that were quarantining and they came here like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So it's actually like easier than it was before lockdown because I was by myself for a couple weeks. And so I'm like, you know, except for the fact that the people I
Yeah,
care
yeah.
about are in like somewhat of danger, I am as well. Like it's it's like weird, but it's not because I'm just like having to stay in the house, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but
And you have the studio. In some ways, it sounds kind of magical.
yeah, I mean that part
Like
is
everything's right there, self-contained.
exactly, yeah. Um, do you have any like COVID recipes or anything you'd want to share before we
I
move?
definitely jumped on the sourdough starter bandwagon
Mhm.
because suddenly everyone. I was thinking this last night. I thought everyone was gluten free, but I guess not because there's no flour or yeast anywhere, and everyone
That
everyone
is
went back
funny.
to bread right away.
In LA, everyone's like, give me some of that gluten.
Everyone's like, "Oh my god, the gluten! We need the gluten!" But it was funny to learn. I mean, it's fun. I feel like those are like good skills. It's like raised the survivalist in some of us. Like, wow, I don't even know. I didn't even know you could make your own sort of starter. Like that's how.
Totally. Yeah, or that
So
it was really that easy to make bread at all. And
yeah.
who
So I've
knew?
been Who knew? So I've been making that. I made like really good pizza a couple times, and yeah, that's been fun.
That's great.
But the challenge of it is exercise. I have to say, I feel definitely
You go out on the streets, or are they like, no?
no people are out there, but I feel it's just so urban, so there are more people. It also just doesn't feel like everyone's doing the distance thing and the mask thing, and I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway,
No, I feel you. I mean, and we're allowed to go out, but I'm still like, my steps have gone from like, you know, whatever to like 1 mile a day if I'm lucky.
yeah, totally, yeah. That part's not good. But I also think maybe that's the nesting part of it. If we can give into it, maybe that's part of the rest everyone needed to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and just adjusting to like, how is it that I'm going to function in this space, you know?
Yeah. And it
Because
takes some time to figure it out.
yeah, and like getting over your anxiety of like leaving the house too. I started getting a little anxious, like, oh, when I leave the house, I'm gonna have to like put on the mask and do the thing, and then when I come back, I'm gonna have to like, you know, like,
Do
you know,
the
wipe everything down, like.
It's
So
intense.
that part kind of creates a little extra like stress around like leaving.
Yeah. I think I'm getting over my need for tons of carbs though. So I feel like,
That's
you
good.
know, we're moving through the phases. So um
Totally.
yeah. But
Cool.
I'm so curious to see how it'll change what everyone makes. That's sort of my overarching message. Like what is the art world gonna be? What's art gonna be? It's gonna be really cool to see.
Yeah, hopefully, right? Like, yeah, it'll probably spur some creativity. Oh, one other thing, like, yeah, thinking about artists who made work during like World War II. Um,
Yeah.
and, you know, I have a lot more respect for people who kept a creative practice during these like insanely stressful periods where potentially they were moving to different countries and refugee, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, not that we're even there, but it made me realize like, oh, well, I'm having trouble like knowing people are in quarantine. Like, you
I
know.
think totally. People find that they have to no matter what. And so yeah, it will be interesting. We won't know until in hindsight what it yielded, but it's been a great equalizer in some ways. But
Yeah,
so it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in art.
for sure.
Not really. Already it's unequal again. What am I talking about? The bailout was a total sham. So oh well.
I know. I'm hesitant to be too positive just until after November and we know what's going to happen. And even then, maybe not. But cool. Well, any last words of wisdom or off the book?
No, just we all got to keep at it, and thank God for art, right?
Yeah, seriously, I would be going insane.
I would be going insane too, and for Zoom.
And for
Although not for the Zoom bombers, but
exactly creeps. Cool. Well, I'm gonna say bye to you officially offline, but thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
I will post all of your social links on the Instagram post that will go out. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks.